And every moment counts, baby, I don't wanna miss a thing. We can sleep under the stars, we can sleep under the stars, or hang out in hotel bars, driving somewhere in your car. We can sleep under the stars, we can sleep under the stars, under the stars. Take my hand, and we don't need to do the things we don't want to do.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of Straight Talk Live. Previously, Straight Talk Podcast has been a recorded session, but this time around, we're switching it up to live streaming because we want to have a straight talk that is unedited and live, and we can interact with you guys in the comment section as well. Well, without further ado, guys, in this first live stream of Straight Talk, I'm very honored again to have the special guests, Mr. Jerry Grey FerMuBe from his channel FerMuBe, and we're going to be talking tonight about no English in China, as well as stay tuned. After that, we'll be discussing about the recent Taliban meeting with the Chinese officials. Without further ado, let me introduce my guest. Hey, Fernando and Jerry, good evening. Oh, sorry. Let me. Sorry, I moved the mics for the intro.
Good evening again.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. So why don't we just let you guys have an intro to the audience and greet the audience for this evening? How about you first, Jerry?
Okay. Well, Jerry Grey, pretty well known on Twitter now, not very well known on YouTube. I have about 17 years experience living in China, almost all of it either as a trainer, a teacher trainer, a teacher, or an examiner. I worked for the British Council for quite a while as an English language examiner too. So this particular challenge that the Chinese government have just put out is very, very close to my heart. So that's pretty much why I'm talking about the English language thing. The later part of the issue is a fairly new topic for me, getting involved in looking at what the Taliban are doing here. But it does actually connect to the other area of my so-called Chinese expertise, which is the Xinjiang situation. Having traveled and spent some time in Xinjiang, I have a different opinion to what the Western mainstream media has about the area.
Right. Thank you, Jerry. And on to you, Fernando.
Well, Noel, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you and your audience, and again, Jerry Grey as well. A very short introduction. I am a modern language teacher. I have 28 years of experience teaching. I have taught in the United States, I have taught in Colombia, and for the last 21 years, I have been teaching here in China. I am licensed to teach English, French, and Spanish, but being honest, it's mostly English. This topic that you proposed today is very, very important for me because it affects me directly, and there are a lot of unanswered questions that I think that we can go through and see what the possible answers will be in the future. And I'm very, very glad to be sharing this with you. Also talking about the Taliban towards the end of the show is going to be important because we are seeing the void that America is leaving throughout the world in leadership roles. And this visit from the Taliban is extremely telling regarding that. So I'll be very happy to, share my 2 cents on what has to do with the Taliban's visit and their approach to China. They're coming close to China for their development. So once again, thank you so much. And let's get the conversation going.
Right, indeed, we'll get the conversation going. So recently, we have been advised that there is some new ruling that China has put in place. And this is in regards to preventing extracurricular English lessons for students. I am going to pose this question to the floor because from my knowledge, let me know, and of course to the audience, whether this ruling, does it only apply to like children of a certain age? Is it or across the board for even adults that's learning English? And exactly what are the fine measurements or the fine rules, the fine print of this particular ruling? And it's only currently in a pilot project status, I believe. And could we know exactly which are the affected areas in China right now? So who would like to go first?
Jerry,
Fernando? Okay, I'll go first.
Okay, all right, Jerry. Great.
As far as I'm aware, it's not a pilot. This has happened. It's happening now, and it's affecting the whole of the Chinese market. There's several different aspects of it, some of which may be piloted. One thing is they've stopped all IPOs of educational institutions in the United States, or so external IPOs, and they've basically said that you can't register an IPO inside of China either. So that's one starting point. Now, a very, very, very new development. Just about 1, maybe 2 hours ago, the Security Exchange Commission in the United States has stopped all Chinese IPOs, no matter what they're related to, until they understand what this is all about. The fact now is the Chinese government wants all of these schools, that some of them are very good schools and some of them are not very good schools. They're trying to fix a problem. It's cracking a walnut with a sledgehammer, in fact, but it's a very big walnut. Massive amounts of profit are being made and massive amounts of capital being injected into this industry, not for the benefit of the students, but for the benefit of the shareholders. And that's one of the problems. Another of the problems is that throughout China, there are literally thousands. I could walk around the streets of my own city, which is it's a second tier city now, just recently became a second tier city. And I can find probably 40 or 50 English language schools in about a 1 hour walk from my front door. That's how prolific English language schools are. Now, this is not just talking about English, but it's talking about all extra activities. And so the language, what they're saying is, if you are going to go to a school or a training center after school, it must be now for something that is A, not for profit, and B, not related to the school curriculum. So in other words, the kids who are studying the maths, the sciences, the English, all of the other subjects, they can no longer do that except in school time. If a student is learning to play the clarinet, they can still go to clarinet classes. If they're learning to play football, they can still go to football classes. So the idea is not to stop these training centers. The idea is to also give some relief to the parents who are under enormous financial pressure, and also give some relief to the students who are under educational pressure. So there's several different aspects of it, and it has taken effect. It is in effect now. It's not a pilot scheme. It has started. What will probably happen is that we'll see some, over the course of the next few months, we'll see different interpretations in different cities, and we'll see different relaxations in different cities. So, for example, Shenzhen is famous for taking the initiative and taking the lead. And I think you might see that there'll be some international changes, acceptable changes to the industry and the education authorities. And really, that's where we're sitting at the moment. It's so new that nobody knows how it's going to affect us, except we do know it's going to affect everybody in the language, particularly language, but in the school curriculum, after school education industry. And that's why it's such a big deal right now.
Thank you for that, Jerry. And Fernando, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that one of the things to mention and to maybe expand a little bit on what Jerry is saying is that this ruling focuses a lot on what is called tutoring centers. Tutoring centers are those centers that give additional learning opportunities or advancement opportunities to children. And what the government is trying to do is level the competition field. China graduates millions and millions of teenagers each year, and the competition for spots in good universities is extremely high. People fight for a percentile, for 1%, for 1 point, et cetera, et cetera. It's really a very competed field. So what the government is thinking is, it's not fair that some families have the opportunity to send their children to a tutoring center where they get an advantage over families that don't have the money to do so. So they're trying to say, one of the messages is, well, we want people with talent to get the best spots in university, not the people who have the finances to get that ability. Do you know what I mean? You either have talent or you have skill. The repetition and having lessons with one-on-one teachers and things like that will make you a better test taker. So that's one of the things that the government wants to do. They want to give the same opportunity to everybody. So regulating tutoring centers is a very important thing. So making them non-profit, it's going in that direction. There's another important aspect, and this has to do with, well, a reality of China today, which is they have an issue with demographics. You've seen them change their one-child policy. It changed to 2 children. Now it's gone to 3 children. But even though they changed the policy and they allow people to have more children, Chinese people are not having more children. Well, some are not, but the response of the people is not what the government expects. And the main concern is, well, cost of education. That's one of the biggest things. The more children you have, the more money you have to spend on getting them to a level that would allow them to go to a very good university, and that becomes really expensive. So slashing these tutoring services allows them, the government, to drop the cost of education. And if your kid is talented, if your kid is gifted, then he'll have an opportunity to go to a very good university. So they are hoping that this also has an effect on, well, the number of children that families are deciding to have. Yeah, I think that there's 2 social sides that we need to understand coming from this policy, from this measure. One, probably hoping that people are going to have more children, and number two, leveling the playing field and the opportunities that people have to go to good universities. There's a lot more to discuss about this, but maybe we can go back to Jerry and see what he thinks, or maybe Noel tells us what you think.
Well, on your point there, it really got me thinking because, for the average person who maybe get the news, they are perhaps thinking, what happened to these centers then? Does it immediately equate to a loss of jobs for various personnel? And wouldn't that constitute to some kind of a protest?
Yes.
So what?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you guys heard anything about that? I mean,
not yet. I was with an educator last night. I went out and had a cup of coffee with a lady who runs a school exactly like this, and she said, "We're currently in emergency meetings. We don't know exactly where this is going to go, how it's going to affect our place." They are specialists in English. They're specialists in IELTS, which is why they know me, because they're always asking for information from me for how people can do better in their IELTS testing. Now, that I'm not sure what the situation is going to be. Now, let's be fair about this. The whole idea is not to stop people getting into good universities or anything stupid like that. The whole idea is to level the playing field, as Fernando just said, so that everybody has the same opportunities. If you're a rich kid in China, most of the rich kids that I have dealings with, they're not going to go into the Chinese universities. They don't even go to the schools and take the Gaokao. They go to the international schools. They get O-levels, A-levels, or international baccalaureates, and then they take a TOEFL test or an IELTS test and go overseas to a university, and they can afford that. And that's fine. That's great. But there's a great, big, large, huge number of students who cannot get the kind of help that they really need to get into these places, because these places are being taken by people who can afford it. Not necessarily the most talented, but the people who have the most time to cram, the most money to be crammed, and can afford to pay for the high quality or the high level. Now, there's another side to that as well. As an IELTS examiner, I can tell you, and if anybody's watching this who understands IELTS at all, China has one of the lowest IELTS average scores in the world because of this system, where they're cramming, and they're learning what we'd call formulaic language. They're learning exactly how to say an answer. When it comes to the topic of, then read the topic, the first thing that comes to my mind is, and then talk about what it is. So they're using this formulaic language, and they're never getting the higher scores. And the British Council that runs the IELTS test absolutely loves this, because they're failing and failing and failing. And then they're meeting a teacher, someone like myself who has the experience, to tell them that's not what the examiner wants. They can then go into the testing system with the knowledge and actually pass the test. A lot of the Chinese schools are not servicing the needs of their students, but they're charging very, very high fees to do so. So that's another side to this that a lot of people don't realize. You'd have to be in this part of the education system, as I am or was before I retired, that I was in that part of the system where I could see the failures of the system for international education. The local education is fantastic for Gaokao, the university entrance exam. University entrance exam prepares you for Chinese university, but it does not prepare you in any way, shape, or form for an international education. If you decide to leave China and go for a master's degree or a bachelor degree, you are going to fail miserably because you're just not ready for it. And the system is failing them there. So there's a lot of failures in the system. There's very, very high profit margins in the system. There's a lot of things wrong with the system. And I think what China has done is they've said, okay, we've got a problem. So, for example, I broke my wrist a few weeks ago. We've got a problem with this. Let's amputate the arm. And that's the way they fixed that problem. And they've literally amputated this arm in the hope that a hand and 4 fingers will grow back, and the part that was damaged stays out. And I think that's what China tries to do. They fix these problems by hitting a walnut with a sledgehammer, smashing it to pieces, and then putting back the pieces that are important and making them work. I have a feeling that this will settle down, but I have a feeling it's going to take 6 months to 12 months. And only the strongest and fittest of the language centers, the schools, the extracurricular places are going to survive it. So that's where I'm coming from. When I support China doing it, I also have reservations about what they're doing, very much so.
6 to 12 months, huh? Fernando, go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is weird coming from somebody who's probably going to be directly affected by this, but I also support this measure. Let me explain. One of the most common criticisms that foreigners have of China is how difficult the education for children is in China, how demanding it is. Kids have absolutely no free time. And this measure is kind of like targeting this issue. They're trying to solve this. For example, the fact that you can't do training of academic subjects during winter or summer breaks. I mean, it used to be a humongous business to organize academic summer camps. I did that. Everybody did that. So now that's out of the question. Now, the language in this legislation is quite interesting because, and Jerry and I, we had this discussion also on Twitter. What is, for example, what I do, I don't prepare children to pass a test. What I do is teach oral English. Is it possible for me to continue operating since I'm not directly connected to the Gaokao? Let me explain. The Gaokao doesn't test your oral English. The Gaokao is just questions, answers, and multiple choice and whatever. It's not conversation. It's not oral English. So that's, to me, at this stage, unclear. Will I be affected? I'm thinking I will, but anyway. The other thing that's important to consider here is, what are people going to do? What is the future of these centers like mine? I'm not talking about tutoring centers. I'm talking about language centers. What is the future for centers like ours? Well, probably rebranding themselves. As I said in another podcast, probably have piano lessons in English, or have ballet lessons in English, or have, I don't know. I'm already a little bit of a popular person in the public arena, speaking in media, so maybe I could rebrand my center as, I don't know, public speaking in English. So I'm not an English training center, I'm public speaking, but it just so happens to be in English. It's interesting because you have already some centers that have different kinds of training, like basketball, football, taekwondo, saying like, our teachers are very good at math, so we can also organize some math lessons. I'm like, sorry, what? People are trying to find solutions to this law that is being implemented, and we don't know what is going to be acceptable or not acceptable at this stage. Now, I figured that there will be a lot of teachers looking for jobs right now, either going back home or trying to find work at schools, not training centers or vocational training centers, but proper schools or universities. What is that going to do? There's going to be a huge supply of teachers, so prices and salaries are probably going to come down. That is one of the most logical repercussions that I could think of in the near future. People hiring for the next term know that, well, people are trying to look for jobs. So that's another possible consequence.
If I can just come in on that point?
Definitely, Jerry.
I don't disagree with what you're saying about teachers foreign teachers in particular, going back into the university schools. Universities are not really affected by this, but public schools are. This is another arm to this whole thing. The public school system is not taking on any foreigners. So there are not going to be opportunities for foreign teachers to go into the public schools anymore. Have to be international schools or universities. Foreigners can go in there. And this is another problem that's occurred, that China, as I say, they've chopped an arm off to fix a broken finger or a broken thumb. And really, they have addressed this problem fully. Foreign teachers in China are either qualified or they're not. If they are qualified, they've usually got good jobs. They're not doing work at the training centers, the language centers. They usually have a good job in a university or in a school. Now, there will be foreign teachers listening to this who say that's not true. But I'm talking generally speaking, foreigners and I know from my own experience in my own city, almost every foreign teacher that I know has a full-time job and doesn't really bother with working part-time. And if some of them do, it's only a couple of hours a week to help a friend's kid out or something like that. And I've done that. We've all done that. Everybody has. I don't think there's anyone going to deny that. But the fact is, those foreign teachers now are not going to be employed in the public school system either. They're going to be employed in universities if they're fully qualified. If they're unqualified, this is probably the best thing that's ever happened to this industry. Finally, we can get rid of these. And this is why some of the salaries of foreign teachers has always been traditionally low. When I first came here in 2004, I was earning 15,000 RMB a month. About 10 years later, people were offering me jobs at 10,000 a month. And they were saying, well, we can get this guy cheaper. He's a Serbian and he doesn't speak very good English. Okay, and no disrespect to anyone who's not a foreign, who's a foreigner, not a native English speaker. I don't mean that disrespectfully. What I mean is these people are unqualified, not just in the fact that they don't have the qualification. They actually don't speak the language, and they're being employed because they have the right color face. And that's a totally wrong system. It still exists, and now that's not going to happen. And I'm going to, if I may, just go back to 8:09 p.m. Grey Fox, hello, Grey Fox. He and I have a lot of fun on Twitter together. Grey Fox has made a comment. If the education system becomes like America, it will be a disaster. And that's the danger of what was happening here. And I think what China has done is they've said, at some stage, we have to bite this sour apple and we have to really take the taste. And once we take that taste, we've got to chew on it. We've got to get it sorted. We've got to get it fixed, get through it. And that's what they're doing right now. They've taken a bite of a sour apple to get rid of a potential future where kids are going to be in debt, or their parents are going to be in debt because they can't keep up. The rich families can. But as Fernando made the point, rich families, they can do it. They can go internationally. They can stay in here. They've got all the advantages. Most families in China are not rich. Most families.
Another important aspect of this policy, sorry, Noel, is how it's also regulating online teaching. Yeah. When the crackdown came from Beijing on qualified teachers, right? A lot of people left the country and they went to Thailand, they went to the Philippines, they went to nearby countries, and some even went back home. And then that's when you saw the whole, the boom of these online teaching platforms. Now, think about this. If it was difficult for China to check certifications and qualifications of teachers who were here.
And police records.
And police records as well, yes. While these people were here in the country, how are they going to control the certifications, the qualifications, the quality, the standards, the methodology of people that are not even in the country? What are they to do? Take the word of the company? No. Our teachers are old. Yeah. No. Our teachers are. Yeah, but how do we know? Do you know what I mean? So when you distance the teacher from the student via an online platform, you're really, really opening yourself to a lot of issues in terms of quality of the teaching. Then you had COVID, and then COVID also sent everybody teaching online. So there's a need for regulation of online teaching, and this is coming down real hard from Beijing. They just said, and this is part of the language that a lot of people are confused, because the language says no teaching programs from abroad are allowed. So does that mean that a program from Cambridge University is not allowed? Or does that mean that whatever online training service from the US is not allowed? I understand it as, well, no online services from abroad are allowed. So as I said, there's a lot of language, there's a lot of stuff that's not clearly explained or clearly understood by a lot of people, at least by me. And it's important to mention how the government has slowly been taking steps to curb this huge walnut. And yeah, they came down with a very big hammer. Online teaching is no longer going to be an option for Chinese students if the company is abroad. How is that related also to IPOs and to the use of student and customer data? That's also important. They don't want a lot of that information, a lot of that money leaving the country. So yeah, I celebrate this measure because it gives the government much more control over the quality of the education that people are going to get. And I have my ear to the ground to see what is going to be my future.
Yeah, I think that's the case for
So
everybody.
From what you're saying, Fernando, that means like you mentioned the Cambridge example, so that's not on the cards, right?
Well, technically, for example, we have customers calling us like, oh, but the law says that no programs from abroad. Your teachers are foreigners. What does that mean? It means your teachers can't teach here? Like, no, I mean, we are foreigners, but we are in China. So no. And this is talking about programs, not teachers. I mean, the level of confusion of the customer is really, really surprising because people don't understand what these things mean. And we're trying to understand this so we can give them the right information. For the time being, we are finishing our summer courses and we are going to be starting sales next term within 2 or 3 weeks. And there's, as I said, it is a pilot program in a sense that it doesn't apply to the whole country yet. What I read, I could be wrong, is that this is going into effect in Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, like 5 or 6 cities where they are implementing this from this summer, and they're trying to get feedback. This is a legislation that came down from the People's Congress last session, and education was a big issue. So this is the solution. A parenthesis here. A lot of people say that people in China have no saying. This is true. They actually listen to what people have to say in terms of some of the issues that are pressing for the families, for the people, for the population, and they take measures to correct them. Now, once this thing is running, they're going to, again, evaluate what are the positive and what are the negatives of this program and fine-tune the regulation, as you said, probably 6 months to a year. That's an important thing to remember. Another issue that is interesting to consider, when there are no summer camps or winter camps, that creates a huge issue for parents. Parents work every day. So during the school term, well, the kids go to school and they go to work. But summer is a huge problem because they don't know what to do with their children. Basically, a lot of training centers are just daycare. Just drop the kid and just entertain him, keep him safe, and we'll pick him up at 5.
And that's what the regulation says. They can still go to those camps. They just can't be educated in their school curriculum during those camps. They can't have add-on courses from their school curriculum during the summer camps and the winter camps. So they're not actually banning those camps, right?
What I heard is that a lot of programs are going to be established at schools themselves.
Yes.
Like public schools and private schools. So it also affects the teachers because the teaching job was always great, right? Because you get 2 months in summer and 1 month in winter, paid vacation, right? Now they're going to have to be taking care of kids through the summer and through winter. So it's going to
maybe there'll be more teachers to do that because the teachers from the centers will be able to do that, employed by the schools for that purpose. Maybe part-time.
Am I right to say that it's actually essentially a shuffling of resources? Because initially I thought that it was something that is specifically for the Cao, since you guys mentioned that they want to let the really
talented,
smart and intelligent people have a chance at fair competition. versus those who are, so
it's much more than just the Gaokao. It's a complete re-regulation of the entire industry. In fact, the entire after-school care industry, after-school tutoring, mentoring, call it what you like. These places. Now, something that Fernando said, people say that the government doesn't listen to its people. That people of China have no freedom of speech. They have no right to criticize. Well, they do. They have a telephone number they can call, 12345 in any city. That telephone number and I haven't looked at the numbers for 2020 because 2020 is a crazy year where online schools were just exploding and all kinds of things were going wrong in 2020. But I've gone back to 2019, and in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, there were more than 200,000 complaints on those telephone numbers related to all kinds of different things. But when isolated down, more than 30,000 complaints were about education centers. In that period of time, more than 25,000, 12,000 in each quarter, 12,000 schools closed down. These are not schools. These are language centers, they're education centers, they're private institutions, usually not much bigger than 4 or 5 classrooms with 10 or 12 staff working in there, and that's all they are. But 1,200 of them, I'll get my number right, 1,200 closed in the third quarter, and 1,300 or 1,400, nearly 1,400 closed in the fourth quarter of 2019. So we're talking about more than 2,500 of these institutions closing, but not just closing. The ones that close don't get recorded. The ones that disappear do. They just closed their doors. Teachers didn't get paid. Students didn't get the services. They paid for the services. The administrators of the school have disappeared and the door is locked. That's a system that needed to be fixed. This system right now is in the process of complete flux. We're sitting here talking about what might happen. Nobody knows what will happen. We might do this. We might do that. But what was happening, I can tell you for a fact, was horrific. It was terrible for the people who were paying student fees, for the teachers who are working in these systems, and they're mostly Chinese teachers. They're not foreign teachers in these places. Mostly they're Chinese staff, and quite often they'll have one foreign teacher there. They like to have a foreign face, but most of them are not even entitled to employ foreigners. So they're small businesses, 1,500 of them are disappearing every quarter. And I dread to think what 2020 was like when we weren't allowed to go out of our houses. We weren't allowed to go into private schools. It would probably be double that number that have gone broke, but they've gone broke taking students' fees. And another example, there is one particular school that does online training, charges the students 50 RMB. You think that's fair? 2,000 students for a 1-hour course. What's your overhead cost on that? 2,000 students for a 1-hour course will cost you a few hundred RMB to put on, and you're just getting 100,000 RMB, which is basically pure profit. You've got to pay your teacher a salary. No teacher's getting 100,000 RMB for an hour, that's for sure, or anything like it. Probably not even getting it in a month. No, they're not even getting it in a quarter. They'll be getting 10,000, 12,000 a month. So it's half a year's salary for one teacher for 1 hour. That's what they do.
That I find interesting is there was this, I think it was the New York Times who, they've been posting the most ridiculous things about the Olympics, saying that the government in China has this system that is designed to produce gold medal winners. Well, now they're going to have more time. Now they're going to have more time to train and to learn and to get skilled and to get talented. So get ready, New York Times, to write something even worse in 4 years' time.
That's right. 3 years. The next Olympics is 3 years' time.
Yes.
I think it's just a law of large numbers. Because of China's population, you're bound to get the athletes. They are there for you to pick and choose, isn't it?
Yes.
But that's another interesting thing because, look, a lot of students get so much pressure to perform academically. And at least in the classroom, I always try to tell them, like, look, you can be anything. You can be anything. In my personal experience, I have actually taught the number 2 junior golfer in China, Adam. He's now in the United States studying and playing golf in the junior PGA. Here in Dongguan, I didn't teach him, but I met him. One of the best snooker players is here from Dongguan in the world. He plays all over the world. So you tell kids, like, look, I know that meritocracy is a huge thing in China, and your parents have all these dreams and hopes for you to be a lawyer, to be a doctor,
Not just
to
in
be an
China, in
engineer.
Singapore, at least in Asia, it seems to be the case.
Yeah, tiger moms, tiger parents, right? But there's so much more that they can do. So this opportunity to open them to other experience, to learn other sports, to learn other activities, not just study, might be good for the mental health of the kids, for, well, also their overall body health, because they will be more active instead of sitting down in a classroom 8 hours on Saturday and 6 hours on Sunday because they have to go back to school Sunday night.
The funny thing is that the New York Times has been incredibly critical of that as well. And now they don't know what to be critical of. Give the kids more free time. You're being cruel to the businesses. And give the kids less free time. Cruel to the kids. Charge the parents. Cruel to the parents. Make it non-profit. Cruel to the shareholders. New York Times can't get a win out of this one at the moment, because there is nothing. I mean, there's a lot of bad things that are going to happen, but the whole intent and purpose of this is a positive intent and purpose. Go on, you're going to say something for now.
Yeah, I was like
want
to
to
say
say
that
something.
we are like 40 minutes in when we got to get to the next subject. So any last
okay.
One last thought.
last words
absolutely-
on your subject? Yeah.
I absolutely loved what Xi Jinping said, and this is going to sound like a propagandist, but when he said socialism before shareholders, this is what this is. This is what this is. Basically, shareholders, shut up. Yeah, go to the side, sit down. This one, we're going to take care of society. We're going to make a fair playing field for everybody. We're going to take care of our population, of our people, of our countrymen. And that's what they're doing. So it's a fantastic sentence that I'm taking to heart, and good on it.
He's done this.
You just opened up another can of worms for me to want to say something. I
Yeah,
never actually understood this whole thing about shareholders, because when I was just take for example, right, the situation with Cathay Pacific a few years ago, or even now still, a few years ago when I was in Hong Kong, when they said that the airline wasn't doing well, it was like needing to borrow money from, but then again, the shareholders are being paid bonuses. I'm just dumbfounded. And of course, people say, "Oh, you don't understand the system." Yeah, I don't understand the system. What exactly is? How can you have an airline going out of business, having financial difficulties, and yet the shareholders are getting their bonuses?
Yeah.
Right, they're going to retrench. Yeah, I remember now. They're going to retrench staff. Cathay Pacific had to retrench staff, but the shareholders had their bonuses.
They had to retrench the staff in order to pay the dividends to the shareholders.
Anyway, guys, so let's close up on this topic. We are still going to dwell into it as we learn more about
I have one question before we close up.
Yes.
Because effectively, what China has done is they've said there are three things that just people will not have to struggle for in their life in future. This is part of their poverty alleviation. Education is one, food is another, and I think we're okay with food. They've just changed the rules about the Didi, and not the Didi, the Meituan, the food drivers. Yeah, the food delivery drivers. So I think that's another positive thing. It affects the shareholders, but it supports the riders. The third one was health. I don't think anyone really understands what China is doing or what China is up to. They are trying to change. I would call it a cultural revolution. This is a revolutionary process to change the law and change the way that people think about their services. And I think in 2018, Xi Jinping released a book, and in it, he said, we need to fix this out-of-control education system. So anyone putting money into Chinese education should have thought at that time. Yeah, you knew. We all knew it was coming. And this is not a surprise or a shock. Next one, my question, will it be health? Will it be medical? At the moment, the hospitals, I think, are nearly all owned by the government. But I think in places like Dongguan, Shenzhen, you have international hospitals, international dental care. You have that stuff. We don't have that here in Zhongshan. But I think that's coming next. And this is not share market advice from Jerry Grey, because he doesn't know a thing about the share market. But if I had money in the share market and it was in Chinese medical care, if it was international Chinese medical care, I think I'd be getting out of it. And I would have got out of schools years ago. I would not have been involved in anything to do with schools. So that was my question. Do you think healthcare is next?
I would think so too.
That's another podcast.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you
Moving
for
on.
that particular input on this topic on the system in education. So moving along to the next big news is the Taliban's meeting with Chinese officials. So Fernando, can you start us off with exactly what's going on and tell the audience?
Well, I guess that you have to go back to 20 years of America being in Afghanistan and bombing the crap out of it and destroying it. And I've asked this question in my podcast also in a bit of an angry tone. It's interesting to ask how much freedom, how much democracy, how much nation building they accomplished in 20 years. Perhaps the BBC should go there and have a look instead of looking around Xinjiang. But now that they have left Afghanistan, what's the point? Is it defeat? Is it that after 10 years they realize we can't win this war? We can't do it? Or is it more strategic? Is it more like, okay, before Pompeo left, he delisted ETIM, the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, yes, ETIM, as a terrorist organization. And now the Americans are leaving. Basically, let's create the ingredients for something really nasty taking place, separatism and whatnot. And now you have, well, we've seen it, all the bans from the secretary, the state secretary on Xinjiang. They have the Xinjiang Business Advisory, where now no product from Xinjiang can be traded in the United States, and they're trying to get other countries in Europe to do the same. What they're trying to do with those seemingly disconnected actions is to create unrest in Xinjiang, to spark again this separatism, spark again terrorism, spark again trouble in Xinjiang, because as I've said it in the past, Xinjiang is the future of China. The BRI of China just runs through Xinjiang and connects via railways and many other forms of win-win cooperation through the Middle East to Europe. So that's the project. That's what they want to do. So when America left Afghanistan, I had a big question. Okay, the Taliban was very quick to say, Beijing, we'd like to have a word with you guys. And my concern at the time is like, well, Taliban is known to be an extremist organization, an extremist party. They have things that we as Westerners don't align with. And well, now that China is going in and looking at the possibility of cooperating with them, of bringing them into the mix, so to speak, bringing them on board with the BRI and discussing possibilities to develop Afghanistan. My question was, how are they going to handle this? Are they going to say like, okay, we'll build your roads, we'll build your infrastructure, we'll do this, we'll do that, but you take care of your stuff, that's up to you? Or are they going to have some sort of conditions? Like, okay, if we want to do this, we want you to take care of this. We want you to take care of that. We want you to don't do this, don't do that. And from the meeting, I think it was 2 days ago, I think the seat was still warm from Wendy Sherman. When he actually sat down, when the foreign minister sat down with him, they actually told him like, look, we need you to take care of the terrorists. We need you to take care of the radicals. We need you to take care of this and take care of that. We need you to empower women. So there were, I'm not exactly sure about how many points, but there were conditions to this offer of, well, let's work together, but take care of these things that really are not up to our times. So that's what I know so far, and that answered the question that I had only a few days ago. They will cooperate with Afghanistan. They will go into rebuilding and modernizing and involving them in the BRI, but there will be conditions that will be very important for the future of Afghan people in changing how they live, some of their traditions, some of their culture, for good. For good, you know what I mean? It's not going to be a negative thing. It's going to be changes that will be beneficial for the people of Afghanistan. That's the extent of what I know about what's taking place in Beijing. So I give it back to you guys, and you tell me, what do you know and what do we discuss?
Jerry?
I pretty much, you when you said you want to talk about the Taliban, I pretty much fell into a oh my God, Taliban, I don't know anything about the Taliban. So I've been doing a little research on this, and there's a couple of things that I'd like to raise. I pretty much agree wholeheartedly with what Fernando has just said. I do believe that China will engage with the Taliban, and they will engage with the Taliban in a different way to the way the Americans have engaged with the Taliban. Because let's be fair, the Americans have been engaging with the Taliban. They met with the Taliban several times. I believe that Pompeo met with them in Qatar in June of last year, and I believe some of them actually went to America, to Washington, and they met Pompeo there too. I'm not sure of the exact dates of that, but I remember seeing it on Twitter. So it's in the last 18 months, because before that, well, 19 months before that, I wasn't on Twitter. So we know that Americans have engaged. One thing we also know is this. Now, you guys have both been to Xinjiang, so bear with me for a moment while I digress, and I'll come back to the topic. You guys have both been to Xinjiang. Do either of you believe the mainstream media tales of genocide, slave labor, the repression of religion, do you believe that these are happening? I don't. No. I've been there and I don't. So if you guys don't, where do you get the information that this is happening from? And you get the information that this is happening from the same sources that you hear about all the atrocities the Taliban were committing in Afghanistan. Now, how many of us have ever been to Afghanistan? Not many people. No, not yet.
We should go, though. We should go, though.
I'll tell you, I'd love to go.
Thinking about going.
I'd love to go to Pakistan, and in the future, there may be a train line. Now, here's another thing. Ask an American to point to Afghanistan on a map. I very much doubt many of them even the military who've been there probably think it's in the Middle East. It looks like the Middle East. They sound like and dress like the Middle East, so it must be the Middle East, right? It's a long way from the Middle East. It's in Asia. It's in northern Indochina. I don't know how you describe that area, but it's in the Himalayas as well. It's a huge country. And what most people in the world don't seem to realize is Afghanistan has a long border, not a long border, a long snake, like a tail, that comes down into China. It comes into Xinjiang. And it's in the Himalayas. It's at 4,000. It's above the snow line. It's not an easy border to cross. But the Taliban can come in and out of China through that border if they wanted to. The most important thing is, can China, because China wants to link up to the port, I think it's pronounced Gwadir, in Pakistan. There is a port which is built by the Chinese, operated by the Pakistanis. Now, there is a port there which allows Chinese goods to leave the East Coast, travel across China, and then go into Afghanistan, through Afghanistan. And here's another one that most people don't realize, the Khyber Pass. Every British kid has heard of the Khyber Pass, because it's the scene of a great it's the edge of the British Empire type of thing. And there used to be comedy series. Carry On Up the Khyber was a great comedy series. We all knew about the Khyber Pass. We don't know where it is, but it's a link between Afghanistan and Pakistan. There is a link between China and Afghanistan. So now we have a continuum from Xinjiang, which is a troubled region, and a Western mainstream media troubled region, less than a real troubled region. And then we have Afghanistan, which is another troubled region. Now, remember this one little fact. Almost every member of the Taliban is probably under 50 years of age. 1979 was when the Russians invaded. They were there for 10 years. Then there was a civil war in the country for the next 6 or 7 years. Then the Taliban took control for about 5 or 6 years. And then there was the invasion of the Americans. So basically, every single one of these people for their entire life has been at war. The oldest of them will probably say, I was 10 years old when the Russians invaded. The Russians invaded in 1979. It's over 40 years ago. So most of these kids have grown up into what we now know as the Taliban, and they've never, ever known a peaceful process, a peaceful period. So they would probably be really, really keen. And I think China is probably the only country in the world that would say, we will come and work with you. We won't tell you how to run your country. We've got some standards. We don't want ETIM or TIP or whatever they want to call themselves these days. We don't want them being involved in what we do. And we want protection for the people who are working there. We want a train line, which is going to be a good train line. And there's going to be goods going from Eastern China, Central China, Western China, all the way across to the ports in Pakistan for shipment into Europe and America and all the way. So I think this is definitely part of the Belt and Road Initiative. And as a little geography lesson, China, Xinjiang, does join Afghanistan. Afghanistan does join Pakistan, which is on the other side of India. And Pakistan is very good friends with China. So it makes sense. It makes sense for the Chinese to say, let's work together. How are we going to do it? And that's the way China works, rather than let's work together. And if you don't work our way, we're going to bomb the shit out of you for 20 years. Which is what's been happening, not 20, sorry, 10 years. No, it's 20 years. 20 years. Yeah, 2001 they invaded, yeah. So the Taliban have actually said, we're prepared to, we'll look after women's interests, we'll allow women's education. All the things that the mainstream media said they don't do, they have publicly said they are prepared to do that.
Yeah, just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I saw that too. So yeah, I think it's a positive step. And all the Western media is saying neither of them trust each other. Well, they don't want us to trust each other. You know, they don't want it to happen. It's not in their interest. I mean, imagine in 5 years' time when they open up a train line and there's been no deaths, there's been no bombing, there's been no murders, there's been no... That'd be fantastic. It would just show that American system of invading in order to pacify a region is not a suitable system.
And guess what?
Yep.
If there are going to be incidents of bombings and whatever unrest, is going to be coming from external sources.
Yeah. Yeah. But I tell you, if the Taliban take over, do you think there'd be many Americans working around there?
Well, it seems to be that if we follow the breadcrumbs and if we follow, just get pieces of history and start putting them, piece by piece, we can start to see what's unfolding. And as a well-developed Western continent of the world ceases to progress, the other side of the world, it seems, is keen on progressing, keen on cooperation, keen on building bridges and lines and whatnots. I think for people who could actually open their eyes to see actually what's going on beneath the surface, beneath the dress code, we can see that what China is doing and what the Taliban is even doing is beneficial for their people.
Yes.
Right?
And
every
Benon
leader...
there's a guy just made a very, very valid point. It's probably not going to be the Americans, it'll be the Indians. But the Indians will be influenced by the Brits, their old colonial masters, and the Americans. So, yeah, it's very likely to be India that are causing internal problems. Well,
America has been trying to cause trouble all around China. I mean,
all around the world, Fernando.
Yeah. Well, lately, all around China, you had the Secretary of Defense is now in the Philippines, trying to ask them to choose. Okay, are you going to be with China? You're going to be with us. There's unrest in Malaysia. There's unrest in Thailand. There's unrest in Myanmar. There's unrest all over these areas. They're starting scuffles with India. They're trying to disrupt the region so that there's fear, so that there is no stability, so that everything is a lot harder for China to accomplish. But I said it in one of the videos that I was interviewed for I think it was China Daily. There's three things that I think China needs to focus on to really accelerate is ascent as the world leader. Number one, they need to focus on Asia and the Middle East. They need to pacify the region. I've said it before. Can you imagine what a peaceful Middle East would be like? And after the 100-year anniversary of the CPC, there were announcements of China actually starting to talk with Israel and talk with Palestine. Do you imagine if China is able to negotiate some kind of peaceful arrangement, peaceful agreement? I might be hopeful, but that will be a very important development in the BRI as well. Then second, Europe, Eastern Europe, all those countries that are leaning towards the outside of the EU, well, they are kind of like the leftovers of Europe. They're part of the EU, but they're not getting all the benefits of the EU. So
and they're very close to a train line which goes straight through Xinjiang.
Exactly. For example, take a look at Ukraine. Ukraine just came out a couple of days ago and said, like, well, Beijing, we would like to cooperate with you. When just 2 years ago, they were involved in some very nasty stuff with Donald Trump. Now they're looking at Beijing. So this is actually taking place in real time. This area of Asia, the Middle East is super important. The third one is Latin America. And this has nothing to do with the Taliban. But I think that a very strong presence in Latin America, there's socialism and there's change in the air. You can see it in Chile, you can see it in Venezuela, you can see it in Bolivia, you can see it in Ecuador, you can even see it in Colombia. Imagine a very strong presence of China, good leadership, good business opportunities, good cooperation. That's going to take China all the way to the top.
Africa as well. How many years has Africa been colonized? It's the poorest continent in the world, the dark continent. Africans are not poor at all. They're rich. But they've been raped and plundered for the last 400 years. So South America, yes. Africa, yes. Middle East requires stability, particularly parts of North Africa as well. They require the stability that takes a lot more time to get into. To accomplish. Thank you. I think Africa is probably the next target for China. We're not talking about the Taliban now, but for sure, when you're leaving Pakistan from a port with trained goods across Afghanistan into Pakistan and then on a ship, they're going to Africa. It's a great place to send them from that area.
So this show of leadership that Beijing is showing,
leading by example, I would say.
Accepting the Taliban into Beijing, sitting down with them, discussing how they can work together in a win-win situation. It's only going to be fruitful. It's only going to bring good things for Afghanistan and for China. And I think that the Americans really miscalculated not leaving Afghanistan because they should have left a long time ago, but how quick this was going to take place. Honestly, I'm telling you, Wendy Sherman's seat was still warm when the Taliban sat down.
This was supposed to be my next question, actually. My next question would be what you guys think would be the reaction of the Americans based on this mutual discussion that's taking place?
That's a really interesting question. The Americans obviously wouldn't like it. For the last 20 years, they've tried to contain the Taliban. They've tried to contain Afghanistan. They've tried to make Afghanistan into whatever they wanted it to be. I still don't know what their end game was. They asked the Taliban, who were running Afghanistan back in 2000, they asked the Taliban to hand over Osama bin Laden. And the Taliban said, why? What has he done? Oh, he organized the bombing of 9/11. Well, they said, to George Bush, if you can prove that, we'll hand him over. There was no proof. So then the bombing started. And that's what it boils down to. What was their end game in that? What was the end of their 20 years? Because they almost bombed the Taliban into the dark ages, literally into caveman ages. But what they have done, or Stone Age is the word I was looking for there, what they have actually done, the Taliban have immediately come back. And right now, even though there is a government in place, the Taliban doesn't control the cities, the town, the capital city, but it does control all the borders, and it controls several of the provinces. So immediately the Americans have gone, and the Brits have gone, and the Australians have gone, the Canadians have gone. The Taliban have resurged, and they have already taken control of the most important strategic places. So something needs to happen. There is a legitimate government, if you can call it a legitimate government. The Taliban says that the guy who's in charge now, I can't remember his name, Guzno, I think it is, something like that. He has to go. If he goes, we can have peace. If he doesn't go, we're not going to have peace until he's gone. So maybe that's the solution. I don't want to get into the geopolitics of that, but I do think that the Americans will be very upset if China can negotiate peaceful reconciliation inside the country, and it will become an Islamic state, but it becomes a relatively a fundamental Islamic state with some relatively modern rules because of China's influence.
Before I let you have your piece, Fernando, Jerry, exactly what you just mentioned. People want to have peace.
Yeah.
That is the crux of it. People want to have peace. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with people wanting to have peace? Go ahead, Fernando.
No, I wanted to say that something that you mentioned when you were talking about the United States experience in Afghanistan, that was the original BRI, as I've always said on Twitter. Bomb, ransack, and invade. That was the end goal. Just wherever they go, that's what they do. The biggest reaction from the United States is going to be shame, because if China is able to accomplish development, modernity, peace in Afghanistan without bombing them, it's going to show why China is considered a threat. And this has become one of my favorite things to say. The West considers China a threat because they're showing that things can be done differently. They do things differently in COVID, and look where we are. They do different things with poverty alleviation. Look where we are. And they do things differently in terms of capitalism and terrorism as well. If they can export their model, if we call it so, of handling terrorism into Afghanistan, as in crack down on terrorism, put them in jail, and just make sure that you know what's taking place in your territory, then there's going to be peace. Then there's going to be safety. Then there's going to be the proper soil, the proper foundations for building a nation.
That's a really good point. Yeah, speechless.
Well, very, very good points, guys. I think we've had quite a good discussion here. We have reached almost just over the hour mark. And I think from what both of you have explained, this meeting between the Taliban and the Chinese officials is going to be something that we all should be looking forward to more news and development. It's not going to take place overnight. It's not going to be something that happens over the next 1 or 2 years. It's going to take time from what I see. But like I said, I think the crux of it is that people are reaching out. People are, well, not people, but nations are, especially China now, and this example, peace. We're trying to reach peace. We're trying to reach development. Places that has not been developed, they are seeking leaders. They're seeking systems that are proven to work, to implement in their own places. From what I see.
Yeah.
Is that what you guys see as well?
Well, there's no doubt that this is a positive step. The question is it Is it going to work? Who knows? It's a tentative step, but it is a step in the right direction. And that's the best that you can hope for. At this stage, there's a lot of mistrust around the world. And most of that mistrust, as we've already discussed, comes from mainstream media. Mainstream media is pretty much controlled by a few individuals and state departments that work together. We all know that's a fact. That's not conspiracy theories. That's a fact. Mainstream media pretty much dictates what we think. I've grown up thinking that the Taliban are evil. Now I'm starting to question even that. I'm not saying that they're a wonderful bunch of guys. I would not want to be living in a fundamentalist Muslim country. That doesn't suit me at all. It's not what I want. But the fact is, are they as evil as we've been led to believe? Because the same people who are telling us how evil they are the same people who are telling me that I'm a liar when I cycle through Xinjiang completely freely without having any problems except checks. That's all I get, security checks. So those people are telling me that I'm wrong, and I've been there and done it, and they never have. And they're telling me what I should believe about the Taliban. And I'm inclined to say, well, let's see what happens. This is a tentative step. There's a lot of trust that needs to be developed. There's a lot of prejudices that need to be overcome. But you're not going to overcome them if you don't take the steps. And I think this is the right time to do it.
My biggest fear is that we're hoping for a cooperation that is going to be uneventful. I don't know if it's going to be uneventful because we all know that America and Western media like to make events happen.
Cause and effect. Yeah.
Exactly. You saw it, for example, in Zhengzhou. They take something that's positive and they turn it into something eventful, something dreadful. They spin it. So the trust issue is going to be aggravated by any events, any setbacks that might take place during the process of negotiation.
You know the best way to overcome it? The best way China can overcome, because China doesn't really need to trust the Taliban. The Taliban don't need to trust China. We all need to trust that everything can work without that outside interference. If China says, take a look at what we've done in Xinjiang. Xinjiang is pretty locked down. It is secure. And it's secure to the point of being a pain in the ass, but there's no one getting killed by terrorists, extremists. There's none of those things happening that used to happen.
And that's why investment is going in.
Yes, and that's what it needs. It needs a Xinjiang-style security clampdown, which, yes, it's a pain in the butt, but there's no bombs on buses. There's no bombs in the streets. There's no bombs in the markets. There's no suicide bombers.
There's only forced labor and genocide. All right, guys. Thank you. Yes. I'm going to wind down the stream. It's been an hour and 11 minutes. I thank you so much for the chance for me to pick your minds, as Jerry like to say it, on this subject. I really hope that's been very insightful and educational for the audience. And of course, I will look forward to the next digging of the minds with you guys again. Oh, there's actually a super chat that just came in.
Hey, thanks, Eddie.
So Eddie T, thank you for the super chat. And he says, a great program. I see China as a healer of some sort for the Central Asia, the Middle East, and like ASEAN. So 10 countries with all the differences. Thank you very much for that, Eddie. All right. So with that, I'd like to greet you guys a pleasant evening. And any last words from you, Fernando and Jerry, please take it away. Fernando first.
I am so close to 30,000 subscribers. Please go to my channel. Sorry.
Please subscribe to Fernando's channel. I wanted to thank you. Thank you for having me on the show as well. But you actually gave me a challenge today. I knew nothing. Not today. A couple of days ago, I knew nothing about the Taliban except how evil they were, and I started doing some quite in-depth research. And over the last couple of days, I've nutted down and drilled down quite a lot of facts and information about the Taliban, which is not from mainstream news. And yeah, I'm starting to see them in a different light. So thank you you've enlightened me a little bit too. Thank you.
I was joking. Thank you very much for having me, Noel. Thank you very much.
Crux. Let me just end off by saying this is the crux of it for the audience watching, right? If you think that this is something that triggers your mind and you are questioning what we're saying, it's a good step. Question what we're saying and go do your research and find out for yourself what actually is going on. That, I think, is the first step to learning. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much, guys. And
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
all
night.
for watching.
Yeah.
Good night. Take care, and I'll see you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.